You can have the rest. I'll be okay." Those were the quiet words 12-year-old Kiana Briggs whispered as she pushed half her warm chicken sandwich toward the trembling boy hiding behind the vending machine outside the Decatur MARTA station. The bread was still soft. The steam was still rising. And the kid, barefoot, dusty, eyes wide like he'd been running for miles, stared at that food as if it was the first good thing he'd seen all day. The late Georgia heat pressed down on them, thick enough to taste. Cars hissed past on the pavement. Someone shouted from the far end of the station. But the only sound Kiana really noticed was the boy's stomach growling, loud enough that he flinched in embarrassment. He looked no older than 9. He looked like the world had already been far too heavy for him. Kiana should have kept walking. She knew that. Grandma didn't play about curfew, and their apartment building didn't exactly feel safe after dark. Her school uniform was sticking to her skin, her backpack straps were cutting into her shoulders, and she'd been dreaming about going home, kicking off her sneakers and collapsing on the couch. But something in the kid's shaking hand stopped her. Something in the way he kept glancing over his shoulder, like danger had a face and it knew his name. "My name's Zeke," he whispered finally, his voice cracking around the words. I can't find my brother." Kiana's breath stilled. Before she could even ask what happened, the deep rumble of an engine rolled through the station. A black SUV crept past the bus stop, windows tinted darker than legal, its slow crawl almost hunting. Zeke ducked so fast he nearly hit his head. His whole body folded inward like he was trying to disappear. Kiana felt her heartbeat climb. She didn't know why, but she knew this wasn't normal fear. This wasn't a kid lost from his mom at Walmart. This was something colder. "Come on," she said softly. "You can wait at my place." Even saying it felt reckless, but letting him stay out here felt worse. She took his hand, small, trembling, ice-cold even in the heat, and walked him toward the parking lot. Every step made her more aware of the SUV creeping behind them, just far enough away to pretend it wasn't following, but close enough to prove that it was. Zeke walked like a kid who expected someone to yank him back at any second. Kiana tightened her grip. They cut across the cracked sidewalk, past the basketball court, past the rusted mailbox, past the streetlight that flickered more than it worked. She didn't let go of him once. And when her apartment building finally came into view, a pale brick square with peeling paint and loud neighbors, she felt him exhale for the first time. But that feeling didn't last. Because the moment they reached her door, Kiana froze. 2 unfamiliar men in suits, black ties, crisp shirts, polished shoes that didn't match the neighborhood, were coming down the hallway holding up a photo, showing it to neighbors, asking questions. The same photo now stared back at Kiana. Zeke's face. The suit stopped walking. Their eyes locked onto her, onto the boy half hidden behind her. Zeke's fingers dug into her arm. "Those aren't the good guys," he whispered. Kiana didn't know who they were. She didn't know what they wanted. But she knew one thing. Her life had just stepped into someone else's danger. And the men in suits began walking toward her, slowly, deliberately, as if they already knew what she was hiding. The hallway felt too narrow, too quiet, too trapped. Kiana's pulse thudded in her ears as the 2 men in suits closed the distance. They didn't look like anyone from the neighborhood. No maintenance badges. No police labels. No familiar faces from the building. Just hard eyes and matching expressions that didn't fit the story of helping a lost child. The taller man lifted the photo. "You seen this boy?" His voice wasn't warm. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't even pretending. Zeke shrank behind Kiana, pressing into her back like he was trying to melt into her shadow. She felt his breath shaking against her shirt. "No," she said, forcing her voice not to tremble. "Never seen him before." The lie landed between them like something fragile that could break with one wrong breath. The shorter man leaned slightly, trying to peek behind her. You sure? Kiana straightened her shoulders the way Grandma taught her. Chin up, eyes steady, fear swallowed whole. I said I'm sure. A tense silence stretched. The taller man studied her face, searching for cracks. She didn't give him any. Finally they nodded and walked past her, their footsteps heavy, echoing down the stairwell. Zeke didn't breathe until the door latch clicked shut behind them. But relief barely lasted a second. A low rumble rolled through the neighborhood, the same engine she heard at the station. The same SUV with the two dark windows and the wrong kind of silence inside it. Kiana rushed to the window and peeked through the blinds. The SUV was parked directly across from the building now. Not moving. Not leaving. Just watching. Something about the way it idled sent chills crawling across her skin. Like whoever sat inside wasn't just looking for Zeke. They were waiting for the perfect moment to take him. Behind her, Zeke whispered, "They followed me. All the way here." She turned toward him, and for the first time she saw just how terrified he really was. His hands were still shaking. His eyes were glassy wet. He looked like a kid trying not to fall apart. Kiana swallowed hard. "Okay," she said. "We'll figure this out. But you're safe for now." She wanted to believe it. She hoped he would. But when the SUV's headlights flashed once, just once, as if signaling someone inside the building, her blood ran cold. Because the SUV wasn't alone anymore. Another one had just turned onto their street. As you enjoy this story, tap the subscribe button so you never miss another. Kiona's apartment, apartment 2B, wasn't big, but it held a kind of warmth money couldn't buy. The walls smelled faintly of cornbread and lavender. A gospel station hummed softly from the old radio by the kitchen window. And a small photo of Kiana's late mother sat on the TV stand, smiling at anyone who walked through the door. This was the world Kiana carried on her back every day. 12 years old, but already the kind of girl who made sure Grandma's medicine was sorted, who watched the neighbor's toddler when their shift ran late, who saved half her lunch money because bills came before cravings. People called her grown for her age, but they didn't see the truth. She wasn't trying to be older. Life just didn't give her much choice. When she closed the door behind her and Zeke, she immediately felt the quiet settle. Not peaceful quiet, alert, listening quiet. The kind that made the air heavier. Zeke stepped inside like he was entering another planet. His eyes darted everywhere. The couch with the blanket neatly folded, the family Bible on the counter, the school books stacked by the door. He looked at everything except her. "You hungry?" she asked gently. He nodded once. She handed him the leftovers from her sandwich, and he ate like he didn't know when he'd get food again. No manners. No hesitation. Just survival. Kiana sat across from him, watching, thinking, trying not to show her fear. She didn't know what she'd brought into her home. She didn't know if the men from the hallway would come back. She didn't know if that SUV outside was still watching. But something in Zeke's face pulled her in, a softness buried under all that fear. He wasn't wild or reckless. He looked like a kid who had been running so long he forgot what stillness felt like. For a few minutes, neither of them spoke. Then Zeke whispered, "I didn't mean to bring trouble." His voice cracked around the words. "You didn't," she said softly. "You just needed help." He looked down at his feet, dirty, blistered, scraped like he'd walked miles on concrete. She noticed a tear in his shirt, a bruise on his shoulder, a scratch across his cheek. These weren't playground injuries. They were warnings. Kiana didn't mention them. She didn't press him. She knew from experience that some stories needed space before they could be told. A siren wailed somewhere far off. Zeke flinched. "It's okay," she whispered. "Nobody's coming up here." But inside she wasn't as sure. She walked to the window and lifted the blinds a fraction. The black SUV was still there, engine humming, lights off, like a predator sitting in tall grass. Her stomach tightened. She turned back toward Zeke. He had stopped eating. He was staring at her front door. "Kiana," he whispered. Her voice was barely audible. "Yeah." He swallowed hard. "Is it safe here?" She wanted to say yes. She wanted to say, of course, absolutely nothing will ever hurt you again. But the truth hung in the air between them. She didn't know. What she did know, what she felt deep in her chest, was that she wasn't letting anyone take this boy without answers. She took a slow breath. "We're gonna be okay," she said, more to herself than to him. "You're not alone tonight." Zeke's shoulders loosened just a little, like someone had finally lifted a weight he'd been carrying too long. But when a floorboard creaked in the hallway outside, soft, slow, too close, they both froze. Someone was standing right outside their door, and they weren't moving. The shadow beneath the door wasn't long or wide. Just a small shape, someone standing still enough to listen. Kiana held her breath, heart thudding so loudly she was sure whoever stood outside could hear it. Then, just as quietly as it came, the shadow shifted. Footsteps creaked down the hallway. The elevator dinged once, and the faint buzz of its door sliding open signaled the stranger's exit. Only then did Kiana breathe. Zeke didn't. He sat curled into the corner of the couch, knees pulled to his chest, like he was bracing for something that might break through the walls. His chest rose and fell too fast, too sharp. "Hey," Kiana said softly, kneeling beside him. "It's okay. They're gone." He didn't answer. She tried again. "Zeke, what happened to you before I found you?" For a moment he didn't speak. He stared at his bare feet, cracked heels, tiny cuts, dust caked into the lines of his skin. Feet that had carried him far beyond the usual worries of a child. Finally he whispered, "I shouldn't have run." Run from what? He didn't lift his head. Cars. Grown men. People saying they wanted to help. But they grabbed me. And my brother, he told me to hide before they saw me. I heard him shout. And then, nothing. His voice broke. Kiana felt the sting behind her eyes. Zeke wasn't just lost. He was scared for someone he loved and left behind. She took a steadying breath. "Your brother? What's his name?" "Tice." "And you don't know where he is now?" He shook his head hard, wiping his face with the back of his hand. "I waited for him. I really did. But the men came back. So I ran. I kept running until I saw your sandwich. And I don't know if Tice is okay. I don't know if they got him. I don't know anything." The fear in his voice didn't sound like a kid making up something dramatic. It sounded real, raw enough to scrape. Kiana sat beside him. Not too close. Just close enough that he didn't feel abandoned. "You did the right thing," she said quietly. "You're safe here. We'll figure the rest out." He nodded, but his eyes didn't brighten. They only grew heavier, darker. There was more he wasn't saying. She could feel it. Her grandma always taught her, pain makes people hide pieces of their truth. And this boy, he was hiding whole chapters. Zeke suddenly looked toward the window, jaw tightening. "They were taking us somewhere," he whispered. "Not home. Not anywhere good." Kiana felt that chill again. The same one she felt when that SUV rolled past the station. She didn't push him further. Not yet. Kids didn't break open like doors. They opened like locks, slowly after enough safety was earned. But as she stood to turn on the living room lamp, something else flickered across Zeke's face. Guilt. Sure. Heavy. Immediate. "Zeke," she said slowly, "what aren't you telling me?" This time he did lift his head. And the look in his eyes wasn't just fear. It was warning. "I didn't tell you the worst part," he whispered. "What worst part?" He swallowed. They weren't the only ones looking for me. And before she could ask another question, a familiar engine outside revved, louder than before, like it knew exactly where to stop. Soon she sensed it again. Someone was standing right outside their door, and they weren't moving. The hallway in Building C was known for two things: squeaky floors and loud mouths. Secrets didn't last long between those pale brick walls. Arguments, breakups, money problems, whispered gossip. The building heard it all, then passed it along like it was part of the rent. Right now, it felt like the building was listening to Kiana. She held up a hand, signaling for Zeke to stay quiet. His wide eyes followed her every move. The only sound inside the apartment was the hum of the fridge and the fast drum of their breathing. The shadow under the door didn't budge. A soft scrape, like a shoe turning. Then another. Whoever was out there wasn't just walking by. They were deciding what to do next. Kiana's mind raced. If it was one of the neighbors, they might ask questions. If it was the men in suits, they might push past her. No. If it was someone connected to that SUV outside. She swallowed hard. She moved on her toes, crossing the living room as quietly as she could. She pressed one eye to the peephole. Nothing. The hallway looked empty, the gray carpet, the old exit sign, the chipped paint near the elevator. Whoever had been standing there was gone. But that didn't make her feel any safer. Behind her, Zeke whispered, "Did they leave?" "Yes," she said. "For now." The "for now" hung in the air heavy. She stepped away from the door and took in the apartment the way someone else might see it. One bedroom. Small kitchen. Thin walls. A place where voices traveled and doors didn't always close all the way. If anyone heard an extra set of footsteps, an extra voice, a child who didn't belong, rumors would start by morning. And rumors had a way of reaching the wrong ears. She glanced at the clock on the microwave. Grandma wouldn't be home for another couple of hours. Her evening shift always ran late. That gave them a little time to figure out what to do. "Zeke," she said gently, "I need you to stay quiet if anyone knocks, okay? Some people in this building like to mind business that isn't theirs." He nodded, hugging a throw pillow to his chest like a shield. Outside, a burst of laughter echoed from upstairs. Someone turned their music up too loud. A baby started crying somewhere down the hall. All the normal sounds of the building flooded back at once, but they didn't feel normal anymore. They felt like cover. And like threat. Kiana walked into the kitchen and poured a glass of tap water. Her hands still shook, but the simple act of doing something ordinary calmed her a little. She set the glass in front of Zeke. "Here," she said. "Drink this." He took it with both hands. "Thank you." It hit her again how strange this was. A boy with no shoes, no bag, no phone, sitting in her living room like a secret she was suddenly responsible for. "You got any family around here?" she asked. He shook his head. "Just Tice. And he said we wouldn't be here long." "Where were you going?" "I don't know," he admitted. "I just got in the car." He said it was a quick trip. "Then we stopped at a gas station." He went inside. "And then those men showed up." His voice faded like the memory itself scared him. Before she could ask more, two voices drifted through the thin wall from the hallway, neighbors talking right outside her door. "You see that truck outside?" one voice said. "Windows all black. Been sitting there too long." "Girl, that's not the only one," another answered. "I saw some fancy car roll up earlier. Men in suits. They showed me a picture of some boy." Every word dug into Kiana's chest. "They said he was missing," the neighbor continued. But something felt off. Their eyes weren't sad. They were mad. Kiana and Zeke stared at each other. The neighbor's footsteps moved away, their conversation fading down the hall. The building swallowed their words, but it was too late. The damage was done. This wasn't just a random car. or a random search. Whoever wanted Zeke was looking hard. A minute later, a new sound sliced through the tension. 3 firm knocks against the wood. Not loud, not frantic, just certain. Kiana's heart stopped. Because this time when she looked through the peephole, someone was staring right back at her. The peephole glass warped his face, but his eyes were clear, cold, focused. One of the men from earlier, the taller one with the sharp jaw and the too-perfect tie, stood right outside her door, staring into the peephole like he knew she'd be there. Kiana jumped back on instinct, hand flying to her chest. Zeke shrank into the corner of the couch, fingers digging into the fabric. "Is it them?" he whispered. She didn't answer. She didn't have to. 3 more knocks. Same rhythm. Same confidence. Whoever this man was, he wasn't leaving unless he got what he wanted. Kiana's mind scrambled. If she didn't answer, he might get suspicious and come back with someone who had keys. If she did answer, he might push his way in and find Zeke sitting right there in the open. Her grandma's voice echoed in her head. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stand still and look fear in the face. She straightened her shoulders. "Stay out of sight," she murmured to Zeke. "Get in my room. Now." He scrambled off the couch and darted down the short hallway, slipping into her small bedroom. The door clicked shut behind him, but his fear stayed in the air, thick and visible. Another knock. "Apartment 2B?" the man called. His tone was flat, official. "We just have a few follow-up questions. It'll only take a minute." That sounded like a trap. Kiana gave herself 3 seconds to breathe. 1, 2, 3. Then she opened the door just enough to stand in the frame, blocking the inside of the apartment with her body. "Yes," she said. The man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. His partner stood a few feet back, arms folded, scanning the hallway like he was looking for witnesses. "Sorry to bother you again," the taller one said. "I'm Mr. Kane, this is Mr. Lewis. We're part of a private security team working with a family in crisis. A child's gone missing." He held up the photo again, Zeke's face staring back from the glossy paper. "This boy." Kiana made herself glance at the picture like it was the first time. "Yeah, you already asked me about him," she said. "I told you. I don't know him." Mr. Kane tilted his head, studying her face as if every blink was evidence. "Sometimes kids remember things later," he said, easy and smooth. "Maybe he passed you on the sidewalk. Maybe you saw him at the station. Anything you remember could help." His voice was calm. Too calm. Like someone trying to soothe a dog before throwing on the leash. "I don't know him," she repeated, firmer this time. "I've had a long day. I need to get ready for school tomorrow." From inside the apartment, the old fridge clicked louder, the radio hissed with a faint static, a pipe in the wall rattled. Every small sound felt like it could give Zeke away. Mr. Lewis shifted his weight behind Kane. "We can always come back with the police," he said. "They'll have more questions. It'd be easier if we just cleared this up now." The threat was soft, but it was still a threat. Kiana kept her grip on the door tight. If she let go even a little, they could push it open. "You can do what you need to do," she said. "I already told you what I know." For a second, nobody moved. Then Kane lowered the photo slightly, eyes narrowing. "You live here with your mother?" he asked. "No." "Father?" "No." "Who's responsible for you then?" "My grandma," she said. "She'll be home soon. You can talk to her if you want." That was a risk and she knew it. But it was also a shield. Grown men tended to think twice around Grandma Briggs. Kane and Lewis shared a quick look, a wordless conversation. Something about that look made her skin crawl. "All right," Kane said finally. "We'll stop by later tonight. Make sure everything's okay." He slipped a card toward her, but she didn't take it. It fluttered to the floor. If you think of anything at all, call us. We're only trying to keep children safe." The line sounded rehearsed, like he'd said it 100 times before. Kiana didn't answer. She just held his gaze. After a long, heavy moment, the two men turned and walked down the hallway, their footsteps measured and unhurried. They weren't worried. They weren't rushing. They believed time was on their side. She didn't close the door until she heard the distant ding of the elevator and the soft slide of its doors. Even then, she waited another 10 seconds, counting under her breath. Only then did she lock the deadbolt, slide the chain, and lean her full weight against the wood. Her hands were shaking again. "Zeke," she called softly. "You can come out now." He cracked her bedroom door open, eyes filled with questions she wasn't ready to answer. "Did they know?" he asked. "I don't think so," she said. "But they're coming back." He swallowed. "They're not going to stop." She knew he was right. She walked to the window and pulled back the blinds half an inch. The SUV was still there. But now, parked a few spaces behind it, was another one. Same dark windows. Same rumbling engine. And as she watched, the headlights of the second SUV flashed twice, as if signaling that apartment 2B was now officially on their radar. The blinds snapped back into place, but the image burned into Kiana's mind. Two SUVs, same dark tint, same heavy stillness, same wrong energy. One car watching the building was bad. Two meant they were settling in. And they weren't leaving without something, or someone. She didn't tell Zeke what she saw. Not yet. His fear was already overflowing, and she needed him steady if things got worse. Instead, she took a long breath and sat across from him at the kitchen table, where the soft hum of the refrigerator pretended everything was normal. "Zeke," she said, her voice low but clear, "we need to talk." He looked up slowly. His eyes were tired in a way no child's eyes should ever be. Am I making things bad for you?" "No," she said immediately. Then, softer, "But things are getting dangerous. I lied to those men for you. They know I did." He swallowed hard, his small shoulders shaking. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I should have kept running. I shouldn't have stopped near you." The way he said it made her chest twist. "No," she said firmly. "You shouldn't have been alone in the first place." Silence settled between them, not awkward, just heavy with everything neither of them could fix. Across the room a floorboard creaked. The apartment was old, the wood made noise when the weather got hot. But tonight, every sound felt like a warning. Zeke's voice came out small. "They'll take me if they come back. Even if I scream." "Not with me here," she said. The words came out before she could think them through. Bull. Reckless. But true. A tiny spark flickered across his face. The smallest relief, the kind that showed just how long he'd been holding his breath. "You don't even know me," he whispered. "That doesn't matter." Because it didn't. Because kindness didn't need permission. Because some moments grabbed you by the heart and refused to let you walk away. She thought about what Grandma always said, God sends people to you for a reason. Sometimes to help you, sometimes to test you, sometimes to save you. Maybe Zeke was all three. A sudden vibration buzzed against the table, Grandma's phone charging in its usual spot. Kiana grabbed her own phone instead, thinking maybe she should call Grandma early. But what would she even say? "Hi, Grandma, I brought home a scared boy with kidnappers on his trail. Please don't freak out." No, not yet. Not until she understood the whole situation. Her thoughts were interrupted by a loud shout from outside. She rushed to the window again and lifted the blinds just enough. Neighbors were gathering on balconies. Two teens down the street pointed at the SUVs with their phones recording. Someone yelled, "Hey, we see you out there. Say something." But the cars didn't respond. Zeke came up beside her. She hadn't even heard him move. "They're not supposed to be seen," he said quietly. "When they came after my brother, they tried to grab him fast. No talking. No faces. Just hands." The image made her stomach drop. "And you?" she asked. "I hid behind a dumpster. Tice yelled at me to stay down. When I couldn't hear him anymore, I ran." His voice cracked again. She rested a hand lightly on his shoulder. "You did everything you could." He didn't answer. Outside, the first SUV inched forward, stopping directly under the street lamp, as if wanting to be seen now. The driver's window rolled down an inch. No face. Just darkness. A message. A warning. A promise. Kiana closed the blinds. She knew something in her life had just crossed a line. There was no going back to homework and chores and normal Wednesdays. She had stepped into someone else's dangerous world, and brought that danger home. "You're staying in my room," she said. "No lights. No window." He nodded, trusting her completely. But before she could guide him down the hallway, a deep engine revved outside, louder than any car she'd heard in their neighborhood. It made the entire building vibrate. Zeke froze. Kiana did too. Because this time the sound wasn't coming from the SUVs, it was coming from something bigger turning into their street. The new engine wasn't like the others. It didn't rumble, it roared. A raw, expensive sound, the kind you heard in movies before a chase broke loose. It echoed down the narrow street, bounced off the brick buildings, and rolled straight through apartment 2B like thunder. "What is that?" Zeke whispered. "I don't know," Kiana said, but her pulse was already racing. They both moved to the window at the same time. This time she lifted the blinds fully. And what she saw didn't make sense. A low, metallic blue car glided into the parking lot. Sleek curves, sharp lights, rims that gleamed even in the dim street lamp. A Lamborghini Huracan, the kind nobody in their neighborhood would ever see unless they were scrolling online wishing for miracles. The car slid to a stop just a few feet behind the SUVs. That alone would have caused a stir. But then another car followed. A silver McLaren. Then a black Ferrari. Then a red Corvette with custom plates. Then two more supercars she didn't recognize. One by one they filled the entire street. It looked like a luxury dealership had dropped out of the sky and landed on Cedar Ridge Lane, loud, impossible, and breathtaking. People poured out of their apartments. Phones shot into the air. Children screamed in excitement. Teenagers shouted over one another. Adults muttered things like, "Who got that kind of money?" and "This ain't normal." Zeke didn't move. His face went pale like the color had drained straight into the carpet. "Zeke?" Kiana asked. "What's wrong?" He couldn't speak. His eyes were locked on the parking lot, but not on the cars. On the man stepping out of the lead Lamborghini. The door lifted upward smoothly, and a tall man stepped into the glow of the streetlight. He wore a charcoal hoodie, dark jeans, and a diamond-studded watch that sparkled even in the shadows. His presence was quiet but heavy, the kind that pulled every eye in the crowd toward him. People whispered his name like they were scared to say it too loud. Dorian Cade. Atlanta's reclusive tech billionaire. A man so private that the city only had 3 confirmed photos of him. The kind of man who didn't just show up anywhere, much less on a street like theirs. But tonight he was here. For a reason. He held something in his hand. A small, glossy rectangle. Kiana squinted. A photo. Zeke's photo. Kiana's heart dropped. Zeke covered his mouth with both hands, choking on a gasp. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no." Neighbors crowded closer to get a better look. Dorian raised the picture high enough for everyone to see. His voice carried across the entire block. "Has anyone seen this boy?" The crowd stirred. Phones zoomed in. Gasps rippled across the balconies. But Dorian wasn't finished. My nephew vanished hours ago, he said, and someone out here helped him. Whoever protected him, you've changed my family forever. Gasp. Murmurs. Confusion. Kiana's knees felt weak. Zeke shook his head violently. I can't go out there. I can't. Not yet. She didn't blame him. But everyone in the parking lot was now looking at their building. Some were pointing. Some were whispering. Some were already predicting which apartment the boy must be in. There was no hiding this anymore. Outside, the headlights of the supercars flashed in unison. A blinding, synchronized burst of light that made the whole block glow. The kind of signal people didn't forget. The kind that said, we're here. And we're not leaving without answers. Zeke clutched her arm. What do we do? He begged. Kiana didn't know. For the first time all night, she truly didn't know. And then the second line of engines ignited, louder, closer, as another convoy of cars turned onto their street, heading straight toward apartment 2B. Grandma Briggs never made a quiet entrance. Even before her key turned in the lock, her presence announced itself. The jangle of grocery bags, the weary sigh, the faint shuffle of shoes that had carried her through another double shift. For Kiana, that sound had always meant one thing. The world could be falling apart, but inside apartment 2B, somebody still had her back. Tonight, that sound brought as much fear as comfort. The deadbolt clicked. The door opened halfway before stopping against the chain. Kiana? Grandma's voice floated in, tired but alert. Why the chain on? You know I don't like fiddling with this thing when my hands are full. Kiana rushed to the door, fingers fumbling with the latch. Her heart raced as she remembered the men in suits, the SUVs, the billionaire outside. She cracked the door open just enough to let Grandma in and quickly slid the chain back across as soon as it shut. Grandma stood in the entryway, her uniform wrinkled, her hair wrapped in a faded scarf, eyes scanning the room like they always did. Nothing missed her. And tonight something was definitely off. Why are you looking like a deer in headlights? She asked, setting 2 overstuffed grocery bags on the counter. And what is all that noise outside? Somebody shooting a music video out there? Kiana swallowed. Sort of. Zeke hovered near the hallway, half hidden, bare feet on the cool tile. He looked smaller than ever under Grandma's gaze. Grandma noticed him instantly. And who's this? She asked. Her tone wasn't harsh, but it wasn't casual either. Kiana stepped forward quickly. Grandma, this is Zeke. I found him by the Decatur station. He was scared. Barefoot. He said he couldn't find his brother, and some men were chasing him. I couldn't just leave him. Grandma's eyes softened for half a second, then sharpened again. You brought a strange boy into my house without telling me? Yes, ma'am, Kiana said, voice small but steady. I'm sorry, but he needed help. For a moment, the room held its breath. Grandma studied Zeke. She saw the dirt, the bruises, the way his hands shook when he tried to stand still. She saw more than just a stranger. She saw a child in trouble. Come here, baby, she said finally, quieter now. Zeke stepped closer. You hungry? She asked. He nodded. She sighed, the resigned, tired sigh of a woman who had seen too much, but still refused to look away when someone needed her. Lord, you always sending me extra work, she muttered under her breath, moving toward the stove. All right. Nobody's going to bed hungry in this house. Relief washed over Kiana so hard she almost sagged against the wall. But safety was an illusion, and it shattered a second later. Because as Grandma reached for a pot, 3 sharp knocks hit the door, the exact same rhythm as before. This time, Grandma turned toward the sound. Who is that? She asked. Kiana's throat tightened. Grandma, those men I told you about? The ones looking for Zeke? She pointed toward the door. That's them. Grandma's face hardened. The kindness didn't leave her eyes, but something steelier rose up beside it. "Then we're gonna see exactly who they are," she said. She walked to the door and undid the chain before Kiana could stop her. The hallway light spilled in, and when she opened the door wide, the men in suits were back, but this time they weren't alone. Behind them stood the building manager, wringing his hands, trying to smile like everything was normal. At the far end of the hallway, a uniformed officer stepped out of the elevator, one hand resting on his belt as if he already expected trouble. The whole building seemed to be holding its breath that night, and every eye in that hallway turned toward apartment 2B, waiting to see what Grandma would do next. Grandma Briggs didn't scare easy. She'd seen sheriffs at doors, pink slips on paychecks, and nights when the lights went off because the bill didn't get paid. She'd buried a daughter and still gotten up the next morning to fry eggs for her granddaughter. Fear showed up in her life like a rude neighbor. It just never got to run the house. So when she found herself staring at Mr. Kane and Mr. Lewis in her doorway, she didn't flinch. "Evening, ma'am," Kane said, that same neat smile glued to his face. "We spoke to your granddaughter earlier. We're following up. A child's gone missing." The building manager hovered behind them like a guilty backup dancer, trying to look useful. Down by the elevator, the uniformed officer leaned against the wall, silent, thumbs hooked on his belt. It looked clean and official, the kind of picture that soothed people who wanted to be soothed. Grandma wasn't one of them. "A child missing is always serious," she said. "But serious folks usually explain themselves better the second time they knock." Kane lifted the photo. Zeke's face stared back under the yellow hallway light. "We have reason to believe he may have passed through this building," Kane said. "We're checking every unit with management support. His family is extremely worried." Lewis added, "We just need cooperation, ma'am. We're trying to bring him home safe." Grandma's eyes narrowed. "You got a warrant to be checking inside my place?" she asked, voice calm but etched. Lewis shifted his weight. "We're not searching, ma'am. Just asking questions." Her gaze slid to Kiana for half a second, and that was enough. Years of reading bills, faces, and bad news had sharpened Grandma's instincts. She saw the way Kiana's shoulders hunched, the way her eyes dipped, the way guilt flashed across her face and tried to hide. "Kiana," Grandma said quietly, "walk with me to the kitchen." "Ma'am, there's really no need," Kane began. "There is if I say there is," she cut in. "Door stays open. Y'all can enjoy the hallway breeze." She turned and walked toward the kitchen. Kiana followed, heart pounding. The officer's eyes tracked her till she turned the corner. Once they were out of direct sight, Grandma spoke without wasting time. "Tell me the truth," she said. "Is that boy they lookin' for in my house?" The lie came first like a reflex. The truth stepped on its back. "Yes, ma'am," Kiana whispered. "He's in my room." Grandma shut her eyes for one long breath. When she opened them, the softness was still there, but it stood beside something sharper. "You trust him?" she asked. "I do," Kiana said. "He's terrified, Grandma. He said those men chased him and his brother. He said they're not the good guys." Outside, another wave of engine noise rumbled up from the street. Supercars revving, people shouting, someone yelling Dorian's name like he was a celebrity and a miracle worker all at once. The cabinet doors shook. "And that racket outside?" Grandma asked. "All those shiny cars like a parade nobody invited?" "That's his uncle," Kiana said. "Dorian Cade. He's out there with a mic and a photo saying somebody in this building protected his nephew." Grandma stared at her. "So you brought a billionaire's nephew into my kitchen," she said slowly, "and the trouble followed on schedule." "I didn't know who he was," Kiana said, voice cracking. "I just saw a kid who needed help. I think I still would have done it even if I knew." Grandma's mouth tugged just a little at the corner. "I know you would have. That's why I'm tired, but I'm not mad. She squared her shoulders like someone picking up a heavy bag they refused to drop. Go get him, she said. If we're standing in this storm, we need to know who we're standing for. Kiana hurried down the short hallway. Zeke was still on the edge of her bed, fingers knotted together, listening. They're still out there, he whispered. Yeah, she said. But my grandma's on your side. She just needs to hear everything. He nodded, swallowing hard. His bare feet made barely a sound, but his fear walked into the kitchen ahead of him. Grandma pulled out a chair and gestured. Sit down, baby, she said. Start from the beginning. Who are those men really? What were you running from? Zeke sat. For a second he just stared at his hands. Then he started talking. They said they worked for my uncle, he said. They knew his name, his company, the car he drives. They said he sent them to pick us up for a surprise, 'cause he was too busy to come himself. His voice shook, but he kept going. Tice didn't trust them at first, he said. He kept asking questions. But they knew our old address. They knew my school. They knew the nickname my uncle calls me. Tice said, if they're lying, they did their homework. Grandma listened, jaw tight. We got in the car, Zeke continued. We were supposed to take the exit to my uncle's house. We passed it. Tice asked why. They said it was a shortcut. Then the doors locked by themselves. The word locked seemed to thud on the table. They stopped at a gas station, he said. Tice told me to stay in the back seat. He got out and started yelling. One of the men grabbed his arm. People were watching, so they backed off, tried to smile like everything was fine. Tice looked at me and shouted, Run, Zeke. Now. So I did. His eyes glossed over, replaying it. I ran behind the building, he whispered. I hid by the dumpster. I heard them arguing. A door slammed. Tires screeched. When I went back, the car was gone. Tice was gone. Only the other car was still there, driving slow like they were hunting. So I kept running. I didn't stop until my feet hurt so bad I thought they'd break. I ran until I saw you with that sandwich. Silence wrapped around the table. Even the noise outside felt far away for a moment. And you're sure, Grandma said quietly, that those same men are at my door right now? Zeke nodded, tears slipping down his cheeks. I'm sure. They don't work for my uncle. They work for whoever paid them. Grandma drew in a slow breath and let it out through her nose. Well, she said, voice low but firm, then they're not getting you out of this apartment tonight. She stood, turned her eyes toward the open doorway where Kane and Lewis waited in their expensive shoes, and straightened her back like someone stepping onto a battlefield. Before anyone could say another word, a fresh blast of sound shook the building. Engines roaring in unison, horns blaring, the crowd outside screaming as another wave of supercars rolled in to join the first. The window rattled. Lights strobed across the ceiling. The storm outside wasn't just close anymore. It was here, and it was knocking on both sides of Grandma's door. And now Grandma Briggs had to decide which danger to open it to, the men in suits, or the billionaire flooding their block with supercars. The sound outside rose like a wave, thick, vibrating, impossible to ignore. The window rattled against its frame. The floor trembled beneath their feet. It wasn't noise anymore. It was presence. Cedar Ridge Lane had never seen anything like it. Not on holidays. Not during block parties. Not even when the police raided building last summer. Nothing felt like this. Grandma stiffened, her hand resting on the back of Zeke's chair. What on God's earth is happening out there? Kiana rushed to the living room window, pulled the blinds open an inch, and the world outside hit her like a punch. The street was glowing. Headlights from Lamborghinis, Ferraris, McLarens, Bentleys, lined up bumper to bumper like a parade of power. People from every building had poured out onto the sidewalks. Kids recording on their phones, teenagers yelling out car models, adults arguing about what kind of man would send a fleet like this into a neighborhood like theirs. And there, right in the center of it all, stood Dorian Cade. No security guards. No press. Just him, tall, tense, hoodie pulled low, holding Zeke's photo like it was the last piece of hope he had left. His voice cut through the crowd, amplified by nothing but the silence people gave him. "My nephew is somewhere on this street," he said. "And someone here helped him when no one else knew he was in danger." Neighbors murmured, some pointing toward their building. Kiana's stomach twisted. It was only a matter of time before someone guessed which apartment a scared barefoot boy might be hiding inside. Grandma stood behind her now, peering through the blinds. "Well, I'll be," she whispered. "I've served that man breakfast without ever knowing his name." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "But why's he out here looking like the world's ending?" As if he heard her across the street, Dorian lifted a hand, quieting the growing noise. He held the photo higher. "This child is not with the men who claim to work for me," he announced. "Those men are imposters. They took his older brother. We don't know where they are. But we know they're not done." The crowd gasped. Someone yelled, "Lord have mercy." Zeke sank into the couch, hands over his ears. Kiana sat beside him, pulling him close. Grandma's jaw tightened. "See? I knew something was off about those so-called security men." Down the hallway, Kane and Lewis shifted. Their faces remained calm, but their posture changed. A tiny flinch, a stiffening, a crack in the mask. They heard every word. Lewis whispered something to Kane. Kane almost glanced back toward apartment 2B, but stopped himself. Danger had just changed shape. No longer shadowy or quiet. Now it had a target. A billionaire with resources and rage was hunting the same boy they were. Kiana felt it in her bones. War was coming to her doorstep, and every side wanted Zeke. And when Dorian finally turned to face their building, it was clear. He wasn't leaving until someone answered him. Dorian Cade didn't walk toward Building C. He moved toward it, swift, focused, purposeful, like a storm locked onto coordinates. The crowd parted for him without being asked. Cameras followed him like obedient shadows. Every supercar engine behind him stayed rumbling, as if the machines themselves were waiting for his next command. Upstairs in apartment 2B, the air grew sharp. Grandma watched from the window, her breath steady but her hands trembling, just a little. Kiana watched with fear curling in her stomach. Zeke watched with something worse than fear. Recognition. "He's mad," Zeke whispered. "I've never seen him look like that." "Mad at who?" Kiana asked. "Whoever took Tice," Zeke said. "And whoever let it happen." His voice broke and Kiana tightened her grip around his shoulders. Down below, Dorian stopped right in front of their building. He didn't shout this time. He didn't need to. His voice carried because the whole neighborhood was holding its breath. "If anyone saw my nephew today, please step forward," he said. "He is not safe. And his brother is still missing." Kiana felt Zeke flinch beside her. Dorian's next words reached the window like a promise carved into metal. "And whoever protected him, you have my eternal gratitude." Kane and Lewis exchanged another subtle look. Lewis cleared his throat, stepping forward from the hallway. "Ma'am," he said to Grandma, "we need to come inside now. This situation is escalating." Grandma turned slowly. "Escalating for who?" "For everyone involved," Kane added. "These people are dangerous. We need to secure the child quickly before there's a scene." "That's exactly what I'm worried about," Grandma replied. "The child's safety." For the first time since arriving, Kane's clean, polished smile faltered. Zeke's voice cracked as he whispered, "He doesn't know I'm alive." Kiana looked down at Dorian. He wasn't scrolling a phone. He wasn't checking notes. He wasn't blinking much at all. He was scanning the windows, one by one, level by level, searching, hunting, hoping. When his gaze landed on the third floor, on their window, Kiana felt her heart stop. Zeke ducked, instinctively hiding behind her shoulder. Dorian froze, stared, looked again, then slowly raised the photo in his hand. Same face, same eyes, same child. The crowd erupted in shouts as they followed his line of sight, pointing, filming, whispering wildly. Louis stepped closer to Grandma. "Ma'am, open the door. That child needs to come with us. Now." Grandma squared her shoulders, planting her feet firmly, like a guardian at a gate. "You step 1 foot into this apartment," she said, "and you'll be dealing with me first." Down below, Dorian lifted a hand and pointed directly toward apartment 2B. The crowd screamed. Phones lifted like a wall of glowing stars. The world had found them. And in that explosive moment, Zeke whispered the one question nobody in the room could answer: "What if the wrong side gets to me first?" For a long moment, apartment 2B was nothing but silence and pounding heartbeats. The echoes from outside, shouting neighbors, revving engines, the sharp snap of cameras, felt like they were pressing against the walls trying to force their way in. Even the humming refrigerator seemed to hold its breath. Kiana knelt beside Zeke. His hands were shaking so badly she had to wrap both her palms around them just to steady the tremor. "I can't go out there," he whispered. His voice was thin, shredded by fear. "If I go out, everyone will see me. They'll know where I've been. And what if those men try something? What if they take me before my uncle can get to me?" The question hung between them like smoke. Kiana drew in a slow breath. "Look at me, Zeke." He raised his head. "You're not alone," she said. "Not now. Not tonight. Not as long as I'm here." He blinked at her, eyes glassy. "Why are you helping me? You don't even know me." Because she knew the weight of being overlooked. Because she knew what it felt like to need someone and not know who to trust. Because she didn't believe kindness needed a bloodline. But she didn't say all that. She just squeezed his hands gently. "Some people deserve help," she said. "You're one of them." He swallowed hard. "But what if the wrong people reach me first?" This time she couldn't promise something easy. She looked toward the door. Kane and Louis waited out there, quiet but ready like wolves in pressed suits. And outside, Dorian Cade stood beneath the streetlight, searching, desperate, powerful enough to turn the whole neighborhood into a spotlight. 2 forces. 1 child. And she was standing in the middle. Grandma stepped forward, voice steady. "Zeke, baby, the truth is you can't hide forever. Those men ain't giving up. But neither is your uncle. And from the looks of it, one of them actually cares about your life." Grandma turned toward Kiana. "It's time." "Time for what?" Kiana asked, though she already knew. "Time to step outside." Zeke jerked back. "No. They'll see me." "Yes," Grandma said. "The right people will. That's the point." Kiana rose to her feet, but her legs felt heavy, almost rattling under her. She'd faced bullies before. Bad teachers. Nosy neighbors. Even emergencies. But nothing prepared her for walking into a street filled with a billionaire's supercars and the possibility of danger on every corner. "Kiana," Zeke whispered, his voice cracking, "don't leave me alone." She knelt again, pressing her forehead lightly against his. "I'm not leaving you. We're going together." His breath hitched. "But what if they try to grab me? Then I'll scream loud enough for the whole block to hear." It coaxed the tiniest broken laugh from him, but it faded instantly. Outside, a fresh wave of engine noise thundered up the street. More headlights. More cars. More pressure. There was no more time. Grandma reached for her old denim jacket and slipped it onto Kiana's shoulders. "If we're doing this," she said, "you go first. You stand tall. And you walk slow. Let the world see you're not scared. Even if you are." Kiana nodded, though her heart thrashed inside her. Zeke clung to her sleeve. "Please, don't make me go out there alone." "You won't," she said. "I'm right beside you." He took a shaky breath and stood. The hallway outside felt too bright when Grandma opened the door. Too loud. Too exposed. As they stepped forward, Kane and Lewis straightened, surprised then calculating. Kane opened his mouth. Grandma cut him off. "Move." They moved. Not because they wanted to, but because Grandma had a presence that didn't accept anything else. Every step down the hallway felt like stepping deeper into the unknown. Kiana could hear her own heartbeat. She could hear Zeke's ragged breathing. She could hear the officer muttering into his radio as they passed. And then, they reached the stairwell. Voices hit them first. Then the lights. Then the roar of engines waiting at the bottom. Kiana grabbed Zeke's hand. "This is it," she whispered. Zeke squeezed back, terrified. And the moment they stepped outside, every engine cut off at once, throwing the entire street into a silence so deep it felt like the world was holding its breath for them. The night air hit them like a wall, warm, electric, buzzing with tension. As soon as Kiana and Zeke stepped out of the stairwell, the crowd parted in shock. Dozens of phones lifted instantly. Gasps rippled outward like waves. "There he is," someone shouted. "That's the boy. Look, look, he's with a girl." The spotlight wasn't a beam or a lamp. It was hundreds of eyes pulling them into the center of the chaos. For a second, Kiana's knees almost buckled. Zeke's hand tightened painfully in hers. And then, Dorian Cade turned. His eyes locked on Zeke as if the rest of the world vanished. He didn't move at first. Didn't blink. Didn't breathe. Then slowly, as if pulled forward by something stronger than his own body, he stepped through the crowd. One step. Another. The street fell silent except for the faint clicking of cameras. Kiana felt Zeke shaking beside her. Not the trembling of fear, something deeper. Something like the shock of being seen after almost losing hope that anyone would ever look for you. Dorian finally stopped a few feet away, staring down at the child he'd been searching the entire city for. "Zeke?" he whispered. Zeke's lips trembled. "Uncle D." And just like that, the hardest-looking man in Atlanta broke. Emotion cracked across his face like glass under heat. His jaw tightened. His breath shuddered. His shoulders fell. He dropped to one knee right there in the middle of Cedar Ridge Lane and opened his arms. Zeke let go of Kiana's hand. For the first time since she'd met him, the boy ran toward something instead of away. He collided with Dorian's chest, burying his face in his hoodie. Dorian wrapped his arms around him and held on like the world could fall apart and he'd still never let go. The crowd erupted, cheers, sobs, relief, shouting. But Kiana didn't feel relief. Not yet. Because as beautiful as that moment was, something in the shadows shifted. Behind the crowd, past the flash of camera lights, a dark SUV rolled forward. Slow, quiet, wrong. The same model that had been watching their building. The same tint. The same silent threat. It stopped at the edge of the crowd. The back door cracked open just an inch. Kiana's breath hitched. She looked at Grandma. Grandma looked back. They both saw it. Dorian hadn't seen it yet. He was still holding Zeke, whispering into his hair, "You're safe now. I swear you're safe." But Kiana could feel it. Deep in her chest. Safe was not guaranteed. Not yet. Not tonight. She stepped forward instinctively, eyes locked on the SUV. The door opened a little wider. A shadow shifted inside. Someone was about to make a move. Kiana opened her mouth. Just as the SUV's door swung all the way open, and a figure stepped out, moving straight toward the boy Dorian thought he'd finally saved. The SUV's back door swung open like a slow, deliberate threat. Everything else, the cheers, the phones, the humming engines, faded into the background for Kiana. The night narrowed down to that one open door and the shadow peeling itself out of the darkness. It wasn't Kane or Lewis who stepped out. It was a third man. Plain black jacket. Ball cap pulled low. No suit this time. No clean, polished look. Just a face that had done bad things and gotten used to not being caught. He walked with the lazy confidence of someone who believed the crowd was a distraction, and he was the real event. His eyes didn't sweep the street. They locked straight onto Zeke. Kiana's stomach dropped. He moved fast, but not fast enough to cause panic. Just fast enough to cross those few feet in a handful of strides. To most of the crowd, it looked like just another adult stepping forward. But she saw the angle of his shoulders, the tension in his hands, the purpose in his steps. This wasn't a reunion. This was a retrieval. "Zeke," the man called out, voice forced into something friendly. "There you are. We've been worried sick. Your dad sent us." The word dad cracked wrong. Zeke stiffened against Dorian's chest. Dorian's arms tightened. "He doesn't have a father in his life," Dorian said quietly without turning around. The man didn't slow. "Sir, we work for you," he said. "The cars. The convoy. You sent us too." Dorian finally turned his head, just enough to see the man's face. Something in him hardened instantly. "I've never seen you before in my life," he said. The street shifted. The crowd felt it, like a drop in pressure, a subtle tilt toward danger. The man's smile flickered but didn't fully die. "We've been coordinating with your team," he insisted. "You might not remember every contractor. The boy needs to come with us. We'll take him somewhere secure." He reached out. Not for Dorian. For Zeke. Zeke flinched and dug his fingers into Dorian's hoodie. "No," he whispered. "That's one of them." The words sliced through the air like a blade. The officer from the hallway had come outside now, standing closer than most of the crowd. His eyes snapped to the man's extended arm. "Sir," the officer said carefully, "I'm going to need you to slow down and keep your hands visible." The man didn't listen. He took one more step. That was all it took. Dorian stood up fully, putting his body between Zeke and the stranger. The softness he'd shown a moment before was gone. His voice dropped low, deadly calm. "You tried to take my nephews," he said. "You forged my name. You used my company. You hurt my family. And now you have the nerve to step into my face and tell me you work for me?" The man's jaw tightened. "You don't want a scene," he muttered. Wrong sentence. The crowd was already there for a scene. A neighbor whipped out their phone and shouted, "I got his face. I got everything." Others started yelling too. "That's the man from earlier. He was here with another dude going door to door. They said they worked for security." Every word was a match dropped into gasoline. Lewis suddenly appeared at the edge of the crowd, trying to push through. Kane moved too, but he wasn't fast enough to control the narrative anymore. "Officer," Dorian said, never taking his eyes off the man, "this is one of the kidnappers. Detain him. Now." The officer hesitated for half a heartbeat, weighing the billionaire's authority against the chaos of the moment. Then training took over. "Sir, put your hands behind your head. Now." "What's your probable cause?" the man snapped. "A rich guy's hunch and a crying kid?" A voice rang out over the crowd, small but clear. Not just him. Heads turned. It was Kiana. She had stepped forward without even realizing she'd moved, feet carrying her right to the edge of the scene. Her heart hammered, but her voice stayed steady. "I saw you," she said, "at the gas station. I saw what you did to his brother." The man's eyes snapped to her. Recognition. A fear. "You grabbed him," she said louder now. "You locked the doors. You tried to drag him. Zeke ran because you were hurting them." Gasps rippled through the crowd. The officer's hand moved to his cuffs. Kane's smooth mask finally shattered. "Sir, this is getting out of," Kane started. "It's already out," Grandma cut in, stepping up beside Kiana. "And if that man leaves the street tonight, we'll all have to sleep knowing we let a child snatcher walk away." The officer made his choice. "Sir," he said, stepping forward, "this is your last warning. Hands behind your head." The man's eyes darted, calculating exit points, angles, lines of sight. For a second, Kiana thought he'd run. Instead, he lunged. Not for Dorian. Not for the officer. For her. And in that split second, Kiana had to decide whether to freeze or fight. The man's hand shot toward her wrist like a striking snake. For a split second, the world slowed. Kiana saw everything in sharp pieces. The veins in his hand, the fear in Zeke's eyes, the way Grandma's mouth opened in a soundless shout. The officer's hand was halfway to his holster. Dorian was twisting to shield Zeke. Nobody was close enough to stop the man from reaching her. Except her. She didn't think. Her body just moved. As his fingers grazed her skin, she yanked her arm back and stepped sideways, just like she'd learned dodging bigger kids on the basketball court. The man's momentum carried him forward. His balance broke. She shoved his shoulder. Art. He stumbled. The crowd gasped. The officer lunged. In the chaos, the man managed one desperate grab, snagging the edge of her jacket. Denim tore. She stumbled but didn't fall. He snarled, "You little? Don't you touch my granddaughter," Grandma snapped. Her voice cracked across the street like a whip. The officer tackled the man from the side, knocking him to the pavement. The sound of impact echoed off the walls. Knees, elbows, asphalt. The man cursed and thrashed, but the officer pinned one arm, then the other. Cuffs clicked. Shouts exploded. Phones filmed everything from every angle. "That's assault." He tried to grab the girl. "We got you on video, bro." The man spat curses into the concrete, but the fight was draining out of him. He looked up once, straight at Kiana. She saw it in his eyes. Rage, yes, but also something else. Fear. Not of her. Of what she'd just done. He hadn't counted on a quiet black girl from Building C standing between him and his paycheck. The officer hauled him up. "You're under arrest," he said. "We'll talk more downtown." Kane and Lewis tried to retreat into the crowd, but several neighbors stepped into their path. "Where you think you going? You were with him earlier. Y'all were showing that picture around, remember? Dorian's security, Real security this time, men in plain clothes with earpieces, finally emerged from the edges of the circle. They moved quickly, decisively, taking statements, quieting things just enough to keep the scene from turning into a riot. But the center of it all was still Kiana. She stood in the middle of the street, chest heaving, denim jacket torn, hands shaking. Zeke rushed to her side, grabbing her arm. "You okay?" he asked, voice trembling. She nodded automatically, though adrenaline still roared in her ears. "Yeah," she said. "Yeah, I'm good." Grandma stood beside her, resting a steady hand between her shoulder blades. "You did good, baby," she murmured. "You did real good." Dorian stepped forward, eyes never leaving Kiana's face. "What's your name?" he asked. The way he said it, gentle, serious, made the question feel bigger than it was. "Kiana," she answered. "Kiana Briggs," Grandma added, pride threading through the exhaustion. Dorian nodded slowly as if committing it to memory. Kiana, he said, you didn't just help my nephew. You just helped save my entire family. She looked down at Zeke, then back at Dorian. I just did what was right. He let out a breath that sounded like he'd been holding it for hours. Sometimes, he said, doing what's right is the bravest thing in the world. Across the street, another officer approached. We'll need statements from everyone, she said. The girl, the boy, the grandmother, anyone who saw the altercation. Kiana's heart skipped. Talking was different from reacting. Telling the story meant reliving it. It meant getting every detail right. It meant the truth would be written down somewhere permanent. She glanced at Grandma. You can tell them what you saw, Grandma said. You tell the truth. You don't shrink it. Not for them. Not for anybody. Zeke squeezed her hand. Please, he whispered. Tell them everything. For Tice. That name lit a fuse inside her. This wasn't just about tonight. It was about the brother who didn't get to run. The kids who never got found. The stories people tried to bury when they thought no one was brave enough to speak. I'll talk, she said. Under the streetlight, with the supercars silent around them and the whole block watching, Kiana began to tell her story, from the vending machine at the station to the men in suits in the hallway, to the SUV outside, to the moment she pushed back instead of freezing. Her voice didn't shake. Not once. The officer wrote everything down. Dorian listened like every word was a map that might lead him to Tice. Zeke watched her the way someone watches a lighthouse, grateful that it exists at all. When she finished, the officer closed her notebook. That's enough for now, she said. We'll follow up. The tension in the air loosened just a little. But the night wasn't over. Not for Kiana. Not for Zeke. Not for the boy still missing somewhere out there. Because as the officer walked away, Dorian turned back to Kiana with a look that said he wasn't done either, and the next words out of his mouth would change her life in a way danger never could. The lights from the supercars washed the street in a strange, beautiful glow, part celebration, part aftermath. The danger had eased, but the energy remained thick, like everyone knew they'd witnessed something that would be talked about for years. Zeke clung to Kiana's arm, exhausted but safe. Grandma stood behind them, solid as a mountain. And Dorian Cade, Atlanta's most private billionaire, looked at Kiana with a gratitude so deep it softened even the hard lines of his face. He crouched to Zeke's level, brushing a hand over the boy's hair. You're brave, he whispered. Braver than anyone should have to be at your age. I'm proud of you. Zeke nodded, but his eyes flicked to Kiana. She's the brave one, he said. She saved me. Dorian rose slowly, turning his full attention to her. Kiana Briggs, he said, I don't think you understand what you did tonight. She swallowed, unsure how to stand under a spotlight this bright. I just couldn't leave him alone, she said. Anybody would have helped. Wrong, Dorian said gently. Not everybody. Most people would have walked away. Or they would have been too afraid. Or they would have believed the wrong adults. But you saw a child in danger and you chose to stand between him and the world. He reached into his jacket. The crowd leaned closer. Phones lifted higher. But instead of money, instead of a contract, instead of anything flashy, Dorian pulled out a small envelope. Simple, cream-colored, with her name written across the front in clean handwriting. Before I give you anything else, he said, I want to give you this. Not as a reward. As a promise. Kiana hesitated. Her fingers trembled slightly as she took the envelope. It felt heavier than paper should. What is it? She asked quietly. Dorian smiled, softly, sadly. A door, he said. One I think you deserve to walk through when you're ready. Behind them, the officer called out instructions. The crowd murmured, engines rumbled, life moved on. But Kiana stared at the envelope in her hands like it was glowing. She looked up. "Why me?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Dorian answered without hesitation. "Because you remind me of someone I lost long before I had the power to save them." A hush settled over the immediate circle. Even the cars seemed quieter. And when Dorian motioned toward his lead McLaren, he said words that made Kiana's breath catch. "Come inside. I want to show you something." The crowd parted again as Kiana followed Dorian toward the sleek, metallic blue McLaren parked near the curb. Zeke stayed close behind her, unwilling to let her go alone. Grandma walked with them, each step cautious but unafraid. Dorian opened the passenger door and nodded for Kiana to step in. She'd never been inside a car worth more than their building. She hesitated, glancing back at Grandma for permission. "Go on, baby," Grandma said. "You earn more than a ride tonight." Kiana slid into the seat. The leather hugged her shoulders like a whisper. The dashboard lit up in soft neon blues. The air smelled clean, expensive, almost unreal, like the inside of a world she'd never imagined touching. Dorian sat in the driver's seat and shut the door. The sounds of the crowded street muffled instantly, replaced by a quiet hum. For the first time that night, Kiana felt the space to breathe. Dorian rested both hands on the steering wheel but didn't start the engine. "Kiana," he said, "do you know why Zeke matters so much to me?" She shook her head. He stared forward, the faint glow from the screen illuminating his jaw. "When I was a kid," he said slowly, "I had an older brother too. He protected me from everything, bullies, bad days, the world. But the world still found a way to take him." She didn't interrupt. He exhaled. "When Zeke went missing, I felt that same fear again. That same helplessness. And I promised myself I would never lose another child in this family." Kiana looked down at the envelope in her lap. It suddenly felt like more than paper. More than a promise. It felt like the beginning of something she didn't yet understand. "I'm going to find Tice," Dorian said. "Even if I have to search the whole state myself. And when this is over, I want to do something for you, Kiana. Something lasting." She blinked. "You don't have to do anything for me." Dorian smiled gently. "I know. That's why I want to." Silence settled between them, not heavy, not tense. Just full of possibility. "What's inside the envelope?" she asked. "Open it when you're home," he said. "It'll make more sense then." He opened the door for her, letting the night air spill in again. As she stepped out, cameras flashed, neighbors whispered, and Zeke ran up to her, hugging her with all the warmth he had left. Dorian didn't say another word. He didn't need to. Because as Kiana held the envelope tighter, she wondered, what kind of future did I just step into? The next morning the world felt different. Not quieter. Cedar Ridge Lane never really slept, but lighter. The air didn't carry the same fear. The sidewalks didn't feel like shadows waiting to swallow someone whole. For the first time in days, Zeke slept without flinching. Grandma brewed her coffee with a hum in her throat. And Kiana walked the route past the Decatur MARTA station like she always did. Except now, people waved. Neighbors she barely knew smiled at her. Someone honked in recognition. A woman selling peaches on the corner whispered, "That's the girl," and pressed an extra fruit into her hand. Kiana didn't know how to feel about it. Kindness didn't usually echo this loud. But as she passed the vending machine where she'd first found Zeke, she felt something warm settle in her chest. A soft reminder, small kindnesses aren't small at all. Then she heard footsteps, and a familiar voice calling her name. She turned, and there he was, Zeke, running toward her with that wide, relieved smile she hadn't seen until last night. He skidded to a stop in front of her, holding out a folded note. "It's from my uncle," he said. "He said it's for you." Kiana unfolded it slowly. Just one sentence, handwritten in neat black ink. Thank you for giving my family something money could never buy, hope. Below it was a phone number, a name, and a line that read, "When you're ready, I'd like to open a door for your future." Kiana pressed the paper to her chest. She didn't know what the future held or what that door might be, but she knew this. One moment of kindness had rippled farther than she ever imagined. And maybe that's what strength really looks like. If stories like this move you, stay with us and tap that subscribe button. We tell them because they matter.